When millionaire Ethan Varner returned to the vineyard he hadn't seen in 20 years, he expected to inherit land. Instead, he found a hidden letter, revealing a sister he never knew, a murder no one ever solved, and a secret that could destroy everything he'd built. This isn't a story about wealth, it's about what it costs to finally tell the truth. Ethan Varner stood at the edge of the old vineyard, the hem of his tailored coat brushing against wild, untrimmed grapevines. Morning fog still clung to the valley, casting the rows of vines in a muted gray haze. The land smelled like wet bark, rotting fruit, and the sharp bite of autumn. His shoes, Italian leather and far too clean for the dirt road he stood on, sank slightly into the mud. It had been 20 years since he last set foot here. The rolling hills had once been his world. As a boy, he'd chased chickens around the barn, stolen peaches from his uncle's trees, and ridden the rusted tractor just for the noise. Back then, his hands were always dirty, and money meant a roll of dimes in a jar behind the flour sacks. Now he was worth $80 million. He made his money in construction, not the blue-collar kind, but high-end real estate development. Ethan had an eye for transformation. He could see potential in moldy drywall and water-stained ceilings the way some men saw beauty in a woman's face. By 37, he owned 9 high-rises between San Diego and Santa Barbara. By 41, his name was whispered in boardrooms, admired by Forbes interns, and hated by anyone who lost to him in a bid. But no one knew what he left behind. Until the letter came. It was from a lawyer in Paso Robles, thin cream-colored paper and embossed seal in the corner. His uncle Daniel Varner had died 3 weeks ago. No funeral, no calls, just silence. And now the letter. Ethan had inherited the vineyard. But it wasn't the land that caught his attention. It was the last line. He left behind something you must see for yourself, something only you can decide on. So he came. The house looked smaller now, peeling paint, a screen door hanging limp. The old Chevy pickup still sat under the carport, vines creeping up its rusted tires like ivy on a forgotten tombstone. A golden retriever barked as Ethan approached, not the same one from his youth, obviously, but eerily similar. Everything here felt stuck in time, like the valley refused to acknowledge the years that had passed. Inside, it smelled like cedar, tobacco, and regret. The lawyer, a quiet man named Louis Harwell, sat in the parlor waiting for him. A stack of papers lay on the coffee table, beside a dusty Bible and a framed photograph of Ethan as a child. He barely recognized himself, gap-toothed, sunburned, grinning with Daniel's arm around his shoulder. "You're the sole heir," Harwell said, adjusting his glasses. "But there's more than the vineyard." Ethan didn't speak, just nodded, waiting. Harwell opened a file and handed over a smaller envelope, unmarked. "This is what Daniel wanted you to have first. He said it would explain things." Ethan broke the seal with a slow, practiced motion, the way he used to open investor letters, anticipating either disaster or gold. Inside were 3 items: a faded photograph of his mother, a torn piece of newspaper, and a handwritten note in Daniel's script. The note read, "You think you know the past, but you only know what we let you believe. There's a truth buried in this vineyard, Ethan. It's why your father left, and why your mother died. If you want answers, look in the cellar beneath the east barn." The sentence hit like a blow. Ethan's hands trembled, not visibly, but enough for him to clench them. His father gone since he was 9. His mother dead by accident, they'd said. A house fire. No one ever talked much about it after. Harwell said nothing more. He was paid to be present, not involved. Ethan waited until the lawyer left, then crossed the yard toward the east barn. The fog was thinning, but the air still had that eerie stillness, the kind that whispers things when you're alone. The barn creaked open with a groan. Dust floated in shafts of light like ashes suspended in time. He remembered this place, remembered being told never to go near the cellar under the floorboards. Now he understood why. He pried open the hidden latch beneath the old feed barrels. The cellar stairs yawned downward into cold, stale darkness. He turned on his phone light. The beam caught dust motes and cobwebs. Halfway down, something flickered. A shape, a figure, no, not a person, a mannequin, headless, dressed in a woman's sundress, his mother. Next to it, a metal filing box. Inside, old bank statements, a letter addressed to the district attorney, and a birth certificate that made his heart lurch. His mother had a daughter no one ever told him about. And Daniel Varner had paid someone to keep it that way. Ethan sat on the cold concrete steps of the cellar, the box open beside him like Pandora's curse unsealed. He stared at the birth certificate again as if the ink might vanish under his gaze. Name, Clara Mee Varner. Born, October 7, 1992. Mother, Margaret Evelyn Varner. Father, unknown. Clara, a sister, his sister. He pressed his fingers to his temple, pulse hammering behind his eyes. His mother had died in 1995. Clara would have been 3. Why hadn't anyone told him? The letter to the district attorney was folded tightly, nearly brittle with age. Typed unsigned, it began. I fear for the child's safety. The man who claims to protect her is lying. There are things on this land no child should see. The rest blurred as Ethan's breath fogged the page. Who had written this? His mother, someone else? He went back up the stairs, the box in his arms, and sat on the front porch with the valley stretching quiet before him. The sun was up now, cutting golden slices through the mist. It was a beautiful place to hide a terrible secret. He called Harwell. I found the documents. A pause. I thought you might. Why didn't you tell me about Clara? Another silence. Then, because I wasn't allowed to, Daniel made it clear you were only to know if you came back, if you looked for it yourself. He feared the truth might keep you away forever. Ethan laughed bitterly. He underestimated how far I've already run. Do you want to find her? The question settled heavy. Yes. It took 3 days and the leverage of a private investigator Ethan had once used to dig up dirt on a rival developer. She was hard to track. No credit history past 2013. No tax returns. No driver's license. Just a trail of foster homes, juvenile records, and finally a sealed court document from 2008. She'd been arrested at 16. Minor theft, listed as a runaway from a group home in Fresno. Then nothing. Until a name surfaced, Clara Morno, changed legally in 2014, address linked to an auto shop in East Oakland. Ethan booked a flight that evening. The garage smelled of gasoline and rust. A pit bull barked behind the chain-link fence as Ethan approached. A girl with grease-streaked hands and thick black curls twisted into a bun looked up from beneath the hood of an old Mustang. Not a girl, a woman mid-30s, sharp eyes, cautious. She glanced at him once, then went back to her wrench. You lost. He shook his head. I'm looking for Clara Morno. She wiped her hands on a rag, eyeing him like she was reading the fine print on a check that might bounce. Who's asking? My name is Ethan Varner. Her face didn't change, but something tightened in her shoulders. I don't use that name, not anymore. I know I'm not here to cause trouble. He hesitated, the words caught. I'm your brother. She laughed, a single sharp sound. Yeah, okay, and I'm a Rockefeller. I have the documents, he said quickly, pulling the envelope from his coat. The birth certificate, letters, our mother's handwriting, your file, everything Daniel kept hidden. Her face lost all color. Daniel. Our uncle, he raised me after Mom died, told me Dad had left. He never said anything about you. She stepped back, folding her arms. The Mustang hissed in the background like it didn't trust him either. He knew, she said. He knew everything. He put me in that home, told the courts I was unstable, that I had violent tendencies. He said I was dangerous. Ethan blinked. Why? She looked past him, eyes narrowing at some memory he couldn't reach. "Because I saw him bury someone behind the barn when I was 5. The words hit like a gut punch. Ethan stumbled into the truth like a man stepping into an open grave. "Who?" "I don't know a man. I saw them fighting in the vineyard." Daniel was screaming. The man had blood on his face, and then she trailed off. "Next day he was gone. Daniel told me if I ever spoke of it, I'd disappear too." Ethan felt the bile rise in his throat. "Do you remember what the man looked like?" Clara turned back toward the garage and pulled something from a drawer, a drawing, charcoal and paper creased from years of folding. A face, strong jaw, narrow eyes, thick hair. He stared at it for a long time. It was their father. They sat on the hood of the Mustang that night, two strangers bonded by DNA and decades of silence. The sky above East Oakland bled orange from the city lights, but Clara's face remained in shadow, unreadable. Ethan passed her the flask he'd brought, 12-year Highland Scotch. She took a sip like it was tap water. "You're telling me Daniel murdered our father," he said finally, voice hoarse. "I'm telling you I saw him dig a hole and drag a body into it. I didn't understand it then. I just knew not to talk about it." Ethan rubbed his face. "He told me Dad left when I was 9, took off, couldn't handle the pressure of the farm after Mom died." She looked over. "Mom didn't die in a fire, did she?" He froze. "That's what he told me," Clara continued. "But she wouldn't have left me, not for 1 second. She was planning to take me away, said we'd start fresh." Ethan felt the world narrowing. Daniel said she was unstable. He said she left the oven on by accident, that the fire. Daniel said a lot of things. Neither of them spoke for a long while. Then Clara muttered, "I found something when I was a kid, after the fire. It was hidden under the floorboards of Mom's room, a cassette tape. I kept it for years." "You still have it?" She nodded. "It's in a box, labeled as junk so no one would steal it." He followed her inside. The apartment above the garage was small but clean. Bookshelves lined with manuals and crime novels. A wall of pictures, all of people who clearly weren't family. Strangers who must have felt safer than blood. She returned with a shoebox. Inside, receipts, Polaroids, a broken wristwatch, and a small black cassette marked July 5 MEV. Ethan turned it over in his hands. "We need a player." They found one at a thrift store the next morning. Dusty, $7, but it worked. Back at her place, they sat cross-legged on the floor, shoulder to shoulder like kids huddled for a secret. The tape clicked, hissed. Then her voice. Margaret Evelyn Varner, young, calm, deliberate. "If anyone finds this, please know I tried. I tried to protect them. Daniel's not who you think he is. He's been forging documents, moving money. I found checks from someone in Fresno, large amounts, every month. It's hush money. I think he's blackmailing someone or worse. I confronted him and now he watches everything I do." A pause, the sound of her breathing. A door creaked in the background. "If I die, it won't be an accident." The tape ended with a dull click. Clara stared at the player, fists clenched. She knew. She tried to stop it. Ethan leaned back, exhaling through his teeth. "Which means Daniel didn't just lie, he erased her. Her truth. Her warnings. He covered up 2 deaths and buried a child in the system to keep it quiet." He turned to Clara. "We have to go back. To the vineyard. To dig." They returned under the cover of night, headlights off as the SUV rolled up the old dirt road. The moon hovered behind clouds, casting just enough light to make out the silhouette of the east barn. Neither spoke. Ethan handed her a shovel. "You sure you want to do this?" She didn't answer, just stepped out and walked across the yard like it was sacred ground. They dug for hours. By 2 a.m. Clara hit something. Not bone, not yet. A box. Wood, rotted at the edges, reinforced with rusted nails. Ethan dropped to his knees, pried it open. Inside, a revolver, old, oiled, beside it a stack of Polaroids bound in twine, images of documents, checks, a man's face bloodied, and at the bottom a set of dog tags. Varner Graham A. Ethan whispered, "Dad." They weren't just digging into the dirt. They were digging into the rot at the root of their family tree. He looked at her, voice shaking. "We have enough to open a case." "And what?" she snapped. "Get Daniel exhumed from his hero's grave. Let the papers call Mom unstable again while the sheriff's office shrugs. You think anyone's gonna care?" Ethan stood, wiping mud from his hands. "We don't do it for them. We do it for her, for him, for you." She stared at him for a long time. And then she said, "All right, let's burn it down." 3 days later, Ethan sat across from Detective Lorna Cho in a small interview room inside the San Luis Obispo Sheriff's office. The walls were painted that bland institutional beige meant to neither soothe nor agitate, a color chosen by people who feared emotion. Cho tapped a pen against the edge of her notebook. "And you're saying your uncle, Daniel Varner, murdered your father and possibly your mother?" "I'm saying we have evidence. The tape, the photos, the gun, the statements, all of it was buried in a box under the east barn." She didn't blink. "And the sister you never knew existed until 4 days ago led you to it." Ethan swallowed. "Yes." Cho raised an eyebrow. "You know how that sounds, Mr. Varner." "Like the truth." She leaned forward, voice even. "You realize if this goes public, your company will bleed. Investors will pull out. Partners will back away. Everything you've built will be dragged through the mud." Ethan knew. Of course he did. When he returned to Lowe's Angels after that first visit to the vineyard, he'd walked into his firm's glass tower and felt like a foreigner. Every marble hallway and leather chair screamed a language he no longer spoke. His assistant had asked about the trip, and he'd lied out of instinct more than shame. He'd built his empire on steel and glass, on risk, deals, leverage, but it was all weightless now. None of it could dig up a corpse or rewrite a childhood. Cho flipped a page. "I'll be honest with you. Daniel Varner was well connected. Judge's poker buddy. Big donor. Nobody wants to exhume a war vet turned philanthropist based on a dead woman's tape and a box of old photos. He buried 2 people. We'll need more." Clara had predicted this. That the institutions Daniel had flattered and bribed for years would protect him, even in death. Ethan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the cassette. The original. He slid it across the table. "Then start here." Outside the station, Clara waited in his SUV. Her arms were crossed. She didn't look up as he climbed in. "Well," she asked. "They're opening a preliminary case, but they're not thrilled." She scoffed. "No one ever is when you hand them a truth they didn't ask for." They drove in silence for a while, through the rolling hills of Central California, where grapevines reached toward the sun like they had secrets of their own. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said finally. Clara nodded without looking at him. "Why didn't you run further, change your name completely, vanish?" She shrugged. "I tried, but running doesn't change anything. You carry the rot with you. Better to face it than pretend it's not there." He stared out the window. "You sound like Mom." She didn't answer. But when they got back to the vineyard, she handed him something, a faded envelope with his name in Margaret Varner's handwriting. "I found this in one of Daniel's locked drawers. You should read it." Inside the envelope was a letter, 1 page scrawled in uneven lines, tear-stained. "My Ethan, my sweet, stubborn boy, I know you'll find this one day. Maybe you'll hate me. Maybe you'll think I abandoned you. I didn't. I tried to protect you. I knew Daniel was capable of things I couldn't say out loud. He controlled everything, money, property, the sheriff. But I believed one day you'd grow strong enough to see through him. Clara is your sister, and she's your mirror. She has the fire you hide. If you find her, protect her. And forgive me for not surviving long enough to see it all come clean. Don't let his lies define our family. Rewrite the ending, Ethan. I know you can." Tears blurred the final words. He folded the letter slowly, reverently. For the first time in years, his hands shook not from rage, but from the weight of finally knowing. The next day, the news broke. Prominent real estate mogul Ethan Varner reopens cold case involving family ties and alleged murder. His name exploded across headlines. Some called it brave, others called it reckless. Investors pulled out, projects stalled. The board demanded an emergency meeting. His CFO cornered him in the conference room. "You're killing us, Ethan. You could have buried this." Ethan stared out the window, watching the glass towers he once worshipped shimmer like illusions. "My mother's body was buried," he said. "I won't bury the truth." That night Clara texted him one line. "They issued the exhumation order. Dad's grave, tomorrow." Ethan stood alone in his penthouse, phone still in his hand. He had a choice to make. Stay in the city, fight to preserve the empire he'd spent decades building. Or return to the vineyard, stand beside the sister he'd only just found, watch the past be unearthed, bone by bone, lie by lie. He looked at the framed Forbes cover on his wall, the title, "The King of Concrete." He took it down. The cemetery was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that made your thoughts feel louder. Wind rustled through the cypress trees, carrying the smell of dry earth and regret. Ethan stood beside Clara, both of them in dark coats, watching a backhoe hum to life. They'd chosen not to invite media. No lawyers. No cousins or distant relatives who might suddenly remember Daniel fondly. Just them, the forensic team, and the man buried beneath the Varner name. The headstone was modest. Daniel W. Varner, 1949–2024, patriot, protector, beloved. Ethan read the inscription with a bitter taste in his mouth. Beloved by whom? The digging took hours. The ground was harder than expected. When the casket emerged dark mahogany, sealed tight, Clara took a half step back. Her jaw clenched. A coroner opened it with careful hands. Inside, Daniel Varner lay like a wax figure of his former self. But his hands, they told a different story. The left pinky twisted unnaturally. The wrist, subtly fractured. Defensive wounds, signs of a struggle. The forensic tech turned to Ethan and nodded. "You did the right thing." They removed the body, bagged the remains, and began the process of transport. Tests would take time. Months, maybe. But they had enough already, enough to prove that Daniel's death wasn't the end of the story, but the middle of a very long lie. As the sun climbed higher, Ethan felt the weight in his chest shift. Clara stared at the empty hole for a long time. "Feels like we just exhumed more than a body," she said quietly. He nodded. "We dug up who we really are." Back in Paso Robles, the vineyard sat silent. The workers Daniel once hired were gone. The vines grew wild, but it wasn't dead, just neglected. Clara stood on the porch, looking over the fields like someone surveying inherited damage. "What'll you do with it?" Ethan asked. She shrugged. "Sell it maybe, burn it, turn it into something new." He chuckled softly. "That's what I do, tear things down and build over the ruins." She looked at him sharply. "Then don't." He frowned. "Don't what?" "Don't make this another project. Don't put condos here. Don't slap your name on the gate and say it's healed. Let it hurt a little. Let it be what it is." He didn't answer. Instead, he walked into the house, their mother's house, and wandered room to room, touching what she once touched. The table where she braided Clara's hair, the cracked floor tile by the oven, the closet that still smelled faintly of lavender. He opened her old writing desk. Inside, beneath a bundle of letters, he found a notebook. She'd written poetry. Simple, plain, but raw. One entry stopped him. "One day they'll come back. My children. Maybe not together, but they will come. and they'll see that love was here even if it was buried under too much pain. 2 weeks later, Ethan stood in front of a crowded boardroom in Los Angeles. His company, Varner West Developments, had lost 3 major contracts. Stock was down 17%. His legal team begged him to distance himself from the investigation. Instead, he stepped to the podium and said, "My name is Ethan Varner. I built this empire by controlling every variable, every risk, every blueprint, every handshake. But there are some things you can't build over. My mother was murdered, my father too, and I won't pretend otherwise just to protect my image." Reporters scribbled like mad. He continued, "I'm stepping down as CEO, effective immediately." Gasps, murmurs. A CFO dropped his pen. Ethan didn't flinch. "I'm going back to Paso Robles. I don't know what I'll do there yet, but I do know I've spent too long building towers while my roots were rotting." Then he left the room. Clara met him at the edge of the vineyard that evening. She wore work boots and a tool belt. A couple of posts had already been replaced, the beginnings of order in the chaos. "You serious about this?" she asked. He nodded. "I think I have to be. We can't fix what he did." "No," Ethan agreed, "but we can fix what we do next." She handed him a pair of gloves. "Then grab a shovel. These vines won't replant themselves." A month passed. The vineyard changed slowly. Weeds cleared, soil turned, vines pruned by calloused hands that used to sign million-dollar contracts. Ethan rose with the sun now. No boardroom, no suits, just earth and sweat. Some days it felt like punishment, other days penance. Clara had stayed. She moved into their mother's old room, left the walls untouched. They didn't speak much about Daniel. What was left to say? The exhumation confirmed it: fractured ribs, defensive wounds. His war medals couldn't cover murder. The sheriff's office reopened Margaret's case. Quietly. No arrests, Daniel was dead, but a record corrected was its own kind of justice. One night, Ethan found Clara sitting on the porch, staring into the vineyard. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked. "Every day," she said. He nodded. "Me too." They sat in silence, 2 grown orphans bound by blood and grief. Then she added, "But something keeps me here." He looked out over the rows of vines, new shoots stretching under the moonlight. "Maybe it's not what he left us," Ethan said. "Maybe it's what she tried to give us." Autumn came early that year. Cooler nights, golden light slanting through the hills. The vines were fuller now, greener, as if the land itself had exhaled. Ethan walked the rows with Clara, baskets in hand. It was the first harvest they'd done together. No ceremony, no press, just them and the land that once held so many secrets. They didn't talk much. The silence between them had grown comfortable. He looked over at her, hair tied back, face streaked with dirt. She caught his glance and smirked. "You're slow," she said. "I'm methodical." "You're rich." "Was," he corrected, brushing dust from his shirt. "Turns out you can't buy forgiveness." Clara snorted. "True, but you can earn it." They worked until sundown. The barn was quieter now. No shadows, no ghosts, just tools, crates, and new beginnings. That night they sat under the stars, a bottle of wine between them, not store-bought, their own grapes, still young, too early to judge, but drinkable. Ethan poured 2 glasses. "To Mom," he said. Clara raised hers, and to starting ugly but finishing honest. They clinked. She leaned back, eyes closed. "Think she'd be proud?" He didn't answer right away, just looked out over the vineyard, now breathing again. Then finally, "I think she'd be at peace."